Okay, so let's dive in. Welcome to the deep dive.
Good to be here.
Today we're looking at some source material you shared with us. Specifically, it's a CNN YouTube transcript.
Right. And the focus is Elon Musk officially leaving his role in the Trump administration.
Exactly. And our mission today really is just to unpack this source. What are the key takeaways, the reasons given, the outcomes?
Well, based purely on what's presented right here in this transcript.
That's the plan, helping you understand what this specific report says happened and, why it matters according to them.
Okay. So where do we start? What's the headline from the source?
Well, right off the bat, it confirms the departure is official. A White House official is quoted saying Musk was starting the boarding process to leave.
Boarding process.
Yeah.
Leaving his role as a special government employee.
In Musk himself. The report says he released a statement
What did it say?
basically thanking President Trump for the chance to, quote, reduce wasteful spending. He mentioned his scheduled time was up. And interestingly, there's a mention of the Doge mission strengthening, whatever that specifically refers to in this context.
Okay. So standard departure statement, mostly.
Yeah.
But then the source gets into the why, right? The context.
Exactly. And this is where, according to the source, it gets pretty interesting. This departure comes after Musk had been trying to distance himself a bit.
How so?
Well, including publicly criticizing that big administration spending bill.
Ah, okay. The one the source mentions the CBO looked at.
That's the one. Congressional Budget Office estimated it would add, get this, over $3 trillion to the federal deficit.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And Musk reacted to that.
He did. The source says he was disappointed by the huge spending increase, said it undermined the work of what the source calls the Doge's team.
Right. And he had that line, didn't he? About the bill.
Yeah, his opinion reported here was that a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but not both.
Yeah. Okay. Quite a statement. And how did Trump take that? The source touched on his reaction.
It does. Says he was asked about Musk's comment and kind of shrugged it off.
Shrugged it off? Okay.
Acknowledged some parts he wasn't thrilled about, but overall called it the big, beautiful bill and basically said that's the way they go.
Sort of a politics is messy type of response.
Seems like it. Now, the source brings in an expert perspective on the departure itself.
Right. What's their take?
They suggest it was probably inevitable, like a long goodbye.
Inevitable why? What's the reasoning given?
Well, according to this expert, it was partly pushed by the idea that Musk's main businesses were maybe in distress and really needed his focus.
Makes sense. Running Tesla, SpaceX, it's a lot.
And there's another angle the expert brings up, frustration with government itself.
Ah, the classic clash. Business speed versus government speed.
Exactly. The expert contrasts his companies, where maybe people say how high when he says jump,
Yeah.
versus government, where, as the expert puts it, they don't do that.
Right. It's a different beast entirely. Did the source say he struggled with the actual task, finding cuts?
It does highlight that. Apparently finding real cuts was difficult. And the result,
Let me guess, not the trillions he aimed for.
not even close, according to this report. The cuts actually sent up to Capitol Hill. Only $9 billion.
9 billion. Okay, that's
Yeah.
compared to a goal of 1 or 2 trillion.
The expert in the source is pretty blunt about it. Calls $9 billion nothing, a drop in the bucket.
So from that expert's viewpoint, his stated goal wasn't met.
Pretty much. They see it as a high bar that they did not reach, and that $9 billion figure means the effort, in that specific regard, was basically a failure.
And the expert argues real cuts need big reform, not just minor trims.
Yeah, not just tinkering around the edges like regulating his own industry or something called attack NPs, which the source mentions.
Yeah.
It needs fundamental government reform, according to this view.
Interesting. But does the expert give Musk any credit?
Well, yes, interestingly. Despite the criticism, the expert does say Musk can do math,
Right.
meaning he understands the danger of the rising deficit. The expert suggests this was something he genuinely wanted to help with.
So the intention was maybe good, even if the executional result wasn't there, in their view.
Seems to be the interpretation in the source, yeah. And remember, Trump's reaction, shrugging it off.
Yeah.
The expert sees that as Trump just acknowledging, how the sausage is made.
Yeah,
The messy reality of getting legislation done.
right. The compromises and complexities.
But the expert's analysis in this source isn't all understanding. There's some sharp criticism of Musk's approach, too.
Oh, like what?
Suggests he maybe thought he could just trample everybody, maybe bullied cabinet members, ran over things, and took the lion's share of the attention. The expert even references some past incident they call the chainsaw thing.
Chainsaw thing. Okay. Sounds like they felt he was more about style than substance.
That's definitely the implication.
Oh,
The
sure.
expert feels he did a lot more showmanship than actual solid work in the government role.
And did Musk have anything to say about how he felt he was treated?
The source does quote him telling the Washington Post something like, Doge has just become the whipping boy for everything.
Whipping boy. Claiming he or his project got blamed unfairly.
Yeah, blamed even when not involved, apparently.
And how did the expert in the source react to that claim?
Not sympathetically, called it, oh, woe is me, said that's just part of the big leagues.
Meaning, if you seek the spotlight, you get the heat.
Pretty much. The expert argues Musk attracted the attention, wanted the power, showed up.
So he has no one to blame but himself.
Right. And then when people disagreed, the expert claims he started complaining, whining about being a victim.
Victimization. Involving who?
The source mentions the expert bringing up names like Sam Altman or people who dislike Teslas or even Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Okay, so a broad sense of being unfairly targeted, according to Musk's reported comments.
Yeah. Now, shifting slightly, the source also looks at his relationship with Trump going forward. Is it completely severed?
What's the expert's prediction there?
They think Trump will likely still want Musk in his orbit. Why? For the money, basically.
And his risk-taking ability?
Exactly. The expert says very few people can write a check that big or bet that much.
So the connection isn't totally broken.
Doesn't seem like it, according to this. He was apparently in the Oval Office recently, seen as a huge influence.
Still has access?
The expert suspects he could probably always call Trump, but they also note, hearing from others, that some people found him a nuisance.
A nuisance. Okay, so maybe not universally popular within the administration circles mentioned.
That's the picture painted here. And this all connects back to his other work, right? Especially Tesla.
Right, the source mentioned investors were getting concerned.
Yeah. Tesla investors reportedly sent a letter urging him to commit more time to Tesla, like at least a full week's worth of hours.
A whole 40 hours, wow.
Well, the expert in the source actually agrees with the investors' underlying concern, even calling the 40-hour request kind of ridiculous given the scale.
Ridiculous because it's too little for a CEO.
Presumably. The expert highlights that Tesla has real challenges. Big ones.
Like what?
Needing a new car people actually want to buy. The expert feels he dropped the ball on innovation there.
Ouch. And now facing more competition.
Yeah, they say Tesla's in a real jam because of competitors catching up.
Did Musk acknowledge spending too much time on the government stuff?
The source says he seemed to admit spending a little too high time there, but then he apparently blamed the media for it.
Blame the media for his time allocation. How does
Yeah.
that work?
Not entirely clear from the summary, but the expert pushes back hard on that.
What's the counter argument?
That Musk himself was constantly tweeting about politics, that it was a look-at-me situation.
So the expert puts the responsibility back on Musk for both the time spent and maybe even attracting competitors to Tesla.
Exactly. Blaming him for attracting attention, which, in turn, fueled Tesla's issues.
It's a complex picture. What about the overall goal again? Finding waste in government. Did the source offer any other perspectives on that?
It touches on it briefly. While some might see it as hunting for fraud, the expert brings up Steve Bannon.
Bannon, what's the connection?
According to the expert, Bannon essentially said Republicans wanted big cuts, specifically mentioning Doge Pentagon cuts.
Okay.
But Musk's team apparently focused on smaller stuff, missing the chance for huge savings from tackling major fraud.
So missed opportunities, according to that viewpoint.
Seems so. The expert uses some pretty vivid language to describe Musk's government actions overall.
Like what?
Jazz hands. Exhausting jazz hands, sucking up attention, acting like a human shield.
Wow, exhausting jazz hands. That's memorable.
Yeah. The expert says they weren't surprised he got that, implying the criticism and negative attention.
But it's not all negative in the source, right? What about his other companies?
Good point. The source does note other ventures are doing well. Neuralink getting funding, Starlink doing well, SpaceX doing interesting things.
So, success elsewhere.
And the expert actually believes he'd be great if he just focused on those.
Mm-hmm.
Calls the government role an alleyway that just didn't work out.
An unsuccessful detour, in their view.
Yeah. And finally, the ending wasn't explosive, right? No big public fight.
No, the expert wasn't surprised by that. Reiterates it was that long goodbye, a gradual phasing out.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
But the expert did find some common ground with Musk.
Apparently so. The source mentions agreement on things like tariffs, free trade,
Okay.
and the danger of deficits, mortgaging the future of our children. They saw eye to eye on that, it seems.
Right. So, okay, let's try to summarize what this specific source is telling us.
It paints a picture of Musk leaving this government role,
Uh-huh.
where his big goal of cutting trillions in spending, well, it didn't happen, landed at $9 billion, which the expert here calls a failure in that respect.
And the source includes criticism of his style, his focus, the showmanship.
Right. But also acknowledges his genuine concern about the deficit, perhaps.
And this is all happening while Tesla, his main company, is facing serious challenges, according to the report.
Yeah, even as other ventures like SpaceX seem to be thriving.
So the source really highlights that clash, doesn't it? Between his usual way of operating fast, disruptive, and the slower, more complex world of government.
Definitely. And the complexities of his public image and influence, too.
So pulling it all together from this one source,
Yeah.
it raises a question for you, our listener, to think about.
Mm-hmm.
Given the challenges and, let's say, limited success described in this report regarding his government role, how does that tension work? The tension between having really ambitious, disruptive goals and then hitting the reality of huge, complex systems.
Whether that system is the government or even a massive company like Tesla.
Exactly. How does that tension impact the actual potential for change, for innovation? Something to chew on.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into your source material.